Growing up, life often threw me curveballs. My early years were a chaotic mix of struggles and fleeting joys. My family wasn't well off, and our neighborhood wasn't the safest. Despite the hardships, I learned resilience and the importance of finding small joys amidst the chaos. My childhood taught me survival and the value of genuine connections, laying the foundation for my perseverance later in life. As I entered adulthood, those lessons became even more relevant. I navigated various jobs, striving for stability and purpose. Relationships came and went, each teaching me about trust, betrayal, and self-worth. By my 30s, I had a clearer understanding of myself and my goals. Yet nothing prepared me for the whirlwind of events leading me to the brink of a new chapter in life. As a scream of pain echoed in my mind. My scalp throbbed, and my skin felt like it was being pricked by needles. I tried to open one eye, but the brightness felt like a supernova, piercing my brain like a runaway freight train driven by a furious, possibly inebriated Ted Nugent. A horrible screeching sound built up, like cat nails on an endless chalkboard. Sweet Jesus, Buddha, Shiva, anyone? Sick fu, I muttered. I retched but had nothing left to vomit. The screeching coalesced into something recognizable as a human voice. I forced my eyes open and tried to understand the blurry form above me. Shutting my eyes and reopening them, I saw a pair of feet in pink toenail polish and cotton candy slippers. Okay, a woman's feet, I thought. Probably not Leonard from Trailer 6, who sometimes liked to feel pretty when drunk. These feet were too small, lactofungus, and were attached to well-formed legs without his moles or Rick Astley tattoo. The voice began making sense in Spanish, but my limited Spanish from Sesame Street didn't cover what was being said. I caught words like 32 donkeys and your grandmother, likely not an invitation to a Tupperware party. Realizing I was lying on my side in the trailer park's white gravel dust, I pushed myself to sit, dry heaving from nausea and a massive headache. The screeching stopped and the feet jumped back. I looked up to see things had worsened. Rosa Rafaela Rodriguez glared at me, clutching her pink robe and pointing accusingly. Her chihuahua stood ready to attack. Most avoided Rosa. Leonard called her the angriest woman on the planet. I avoided her since she reacted to my friendly greeting as if I tried to kidnap her. Along with court notices, lawyer bills, parole supervision fees, and utility final notices, I got an earful from her. Giving up, I turned and walked away, which only fueled her fury. Despite avoiding her, I enjoyed watching her outside in her transparent pink robe, brightening my otherwise bleak existence in our mostly abandoned trailer park. She drew herself up and launched into me again. Ignoring her, I struggled to my feet, pushing an umbrella off. She stopped, looked me over with disgust, and switched to English. What the hell is wrong with you? I looked down and saw I was standing in the rose bushes outside her trailer, which explained the pain. More troubling, I was unclothed and painted green, white, and red. A small crowd, including Leonard in overalls, Maisie looking like Danny DeVito in drag, and Delbert and Tawny in matching sweats with 5 o'clock shadows, watched with amusement. I grabbed an umbrella to cover myself, sending Rosa's chihuahua into a barking frenzy. You scared my little Liam. Rosa snapped, picking up the dog. I shook my head, regretting it immediately. Liam? Who names a chihuahua Liam? She likes Liam Hemsworth, Maisie chimed in, fanning herself. I prefer Chris Hemsworth, but I wouldn't kick Liam out of bed for eating cookies, if you know what I mean, Maisie added. Rosa's shriek made me cringe, expecting the glass to shatter. The maintenance guy who could fix windows had disappeared a while ago. Rosa, pointing at me, demanded, You think that's funny? No, I replied. Chris and Liam would be horrified. Maisie huffed, folding her arms. Not what I meant. You, she clarified. Rosa launched into another Spanish tirade, likely not a history lesson. Her robe fell open, revealing she wore nothing underneath. The chihuahua pawed at her, pulling the robe further open, showing off a well-groomed heart shape. Never seen a naked woman before. Rosa snapped. Not many built like you. I love the heart, I replied. She closed her robe, annoyed. Clean your vomit out of my rose bush as a whole. I looked down at the mess. I'll get to it this afternoon. Yeah, right, Rosa replied, disbelieving. You stole my heart, I said, nodding at her robe flapping open. She tried to close it, exposing a nipple before covering up again. What? She questioned. Nothing. I'm staying until the show is over, I said. She growled and stormed off, her robe flying up to reveal her bare bum. The crowd dispersed, leaving Leonard, Maisie, and me. That's quite a woman, Leonard muttered, scratching himself. For God's sake, Leonard, she's half your age, Maisie said. Yeah, she is, Leonard grinned. Pervert, Maisie retorted. Yep, Leonard agreed, still looking where Rosa had disappeared. Hey, Maisie, I called, still watching where Rosa had disappeared. Joseph? Is it Sunday? It's Sunday, Maisie confirmed. Good, then I'm not late for work, I said. Maisie looked puzzled. What does Mexicano honorario mean? Honorary Mexican? I replied, seeing the letters written on my chest. I'm going to kill Miguel. Dragging myself to my trailer, I retrieved my key from under a flower pot. Inside, my furniture consisted of 2 lawn chairs, a thrift shop radio, and a milk crate. I put on some shorts and fetched several buckets of water for Rosa's garden, not wanting to ask to use her hydrant. I spent the rest of the day fighting my hangover with gallons of water and Tylenol, setting my alarm before passing out. I was at the gate before sunrise when Miguel pulled up in the old school bus. Hey, Jose grinned. It's Joseph, you a hole. I corrected him. It's Jose now. We made you an honorary Mexican, remember? Miguel reminded me. Yeah, I saw the label. You didn't need to use a permanent marker. I think my blood was replaced with tequila, I said. And mezcal, Miguel nodded. You left me at the gate naked, I accused him. You had a sombrero, he said smugly. I glared as I sat behind him. I woke up in Rosa's garden. Is that a metaphor? Because I bet her rose garden is amazing, Miguel joked. No, idiot, I threw up on her actual roses, I clarified. Lucky you're alive. She has a crazy temper. Her ex-husband cheated, and she stabbed both him and his mistress. She's dangerous, Miguel explained. Why'd you do that to me? I asked, still annoyed. Honor, you're the first gringo crew boss who doesn't think we'll steal everything, he answered. We're harvesting tomatoes. What is there to steal? I questioned. It's pronounced Jesus. We like your common sense. It's rare, Miguel said. Though I was technically the crew boss, Miguel ran everything. I just stayed out of the way and picked tomatoes with the others. You could be the boss, Miguel suggested. No way, I need you to take the blame if anything goes missing, I replied. He repeated this in Spanish to the crew, making them laugh all the way to the fields. 3 hours into our 14-hour day, my parole officer showed up. Joseph, just checking in to make sure you made it to work. Pio Heinen sneered. I'm here, I replied. It's a miracle. You know the difference between a parolee and an inmate? Just one mess up and you're a big mess, Pio said. I'm meeting my parole conditions. I'm working, I'm clean, and I'm not involved in anything, I responded. You've had 3 jobs in 6 months. Now, you're working with a bunch of wetbacks, he said, glancing at Miguel, who pretended not to understand English. You'll never make another 18 months. I lost those jobs because you interfered, I accused. They needed to know what kind of loser they'd hired, he sneered. Time for a pill test. You have 2 hours to get to the center. I don't have a car, and it's almost 2 hours away, I explained. You know the deal. You fail or miss it, you're back inside, he chuckled and left. Miguel walked up beside me. Sure you're not Mexican, Jose? Miguel asked. Pretty sure. Unless Mum was with the gardener, I joked. You might want to ask just to be sure, Miguel suggested. Why? I inquired. Because that man wants you on the other side of a wall, he said, staring after Pio's car. Jesus, you're pronouncing it wrong. Remember, you're Mexican now, I said. Alejandro will drive you to the test center. I don't have time to train a new crew boss, Miguel stated. We arrived at the test center with 15 minutes to spare. I had to pry my hands off the seat, not knowing you could drift a bus in heavy traffic. On the way back, Alejandro chatted a lot, but he didn't speak English. My Spanish was limited to counting, naming colors, and some obscenities, so we didn't get far. At dinner, Miguel sat next to me. Saturday night, you started to tell me how you ended up here, but passed out before explaining how a big shot stockbroker ended up picking tomatoes. Not much to tell. And Ceci investigation hit my firm. I didn't think it involved me, but I was locked out. Turns out there was insider trading under a fake account I had access to. I got blamed, but they couldn't prove it, so they pulled my Series 7 license, I explained. You still ended up in jail, Miguel noted. Yeah, they found cocaine in my car during the investigation. It wasn't mine, but I couldn't prove it. They used it to pressure me about the missing money, tens of millions. I got 3 years, but only served 6 months in county jail due to overcrowding, I continued. You sure you didn't take the money? If you did? I have a cousin, Miguel suggested. If I had millions, I'd be in Mexico by now, I replied. So where'd the pills come from? He asked. I thought they were planted, but I picked up high-end clients from the airport a lot. One could have left it. Bad luck. Everything fell apart. My wife stuck around until I was sentenced, then divorced me, taking our savings, I said. What a witch, Miguel commented. I wasn't totally numb to it, but I had enough cheap tequila to take the edge off. She works at the same company, so she's lucky she didn't get fired. That job means a lot to her, I explained. True love conquers all. Huh? Miguel said sarcastically. True love doesn't pay the bills, I replied. What were you making? Miguel inquired. With bonuses, almost $500,000 a year. Now I'm barely over minimum wage. She took everything, I said. Couldn't you find it? He asked. She's an accountant, and they're good at hiding money. It takes money, time, and lawyers to dig it out, and I don't have any of those. Maybe someday I can look into it and sue for my share, I responded. Miguel shook his head sadly. I've seen your paycheck. It's going to be a while. Against my better judgment, I let Miguel talk me into going to another bar on Saturday night. You need to get out, Jose. Have some fun, Miguel urged. Like last week where I wished I could die on Sunday? I retorted. Despite arguing, I climbed into the back seat. 8 guys could fit in the old brown Bonneville, as long as no one worried about seatbelts. We're going somewhere more fun this time, Miguel promised. I thought that was your favorite bar, I said. They didn't appreciate us enough, he replied. Did we get thrown out? I asked. Maybe, Miguel admitted. Didn't your cousin own that place? I questioned. Distant cousin, he grinned. Besides, this club has dancing. When we arrived at the parking lot, I glanced at him. A salsa club. Isn't that Cuban? I asked. This place has hot chicks wearing very little. I'd come here if it was a waltz club, he replied. You do know how to dance, right? I inquired. Yes, I can do the polka and the waltz, I said. Seriously? Miguel asked, surprised. I can also tango, foxtrot, salsa, jive, and more. Beth and I used to hit dance clubs religiously, I elaborated. Thank God, I thought we were getting thrown out again, he said, relieved. I laughed. I'll buy your first beer. Domestic, Miguel requested. Yeah, I know. I've seen your paycheck, I responded. We had a blast. The club had 2 bachelorette parties and 3 divorce parties, making the ratio of women to men over 2 to 1. Most women were already tipsy when we arrived. I was dragged onto the floor by 2 divorcees, a maid of honor, 3 bridesmaids, and 1 mother of the bride who copped to feel so fast I hadn't finished my drink. I finally sat down watching Miguel get dragged off by the mother of the bride. Holding my Modelo Especial, I scanned the packed floor, filled with more bare skin than a nudist colony. I spotted a woman with a full, toothsome behind and skin-tight jeans. She was talking to someone at a table, bent over to hear in the pandemonium. Every time she moved, my heart, among other things, moved with her. Damn, that was one fine bum. I was still entranced when Miguel stumbled to our table and sat next to me. Your cougar warned me, a whole Miguel said. Yeah, she was a handful. That cougar got my zipper down. She mentioned she was divorced like 6 times, he replied, pausing to follow my gaze. Damn, that's some fine. He stopped as the woman straightened and looked at us. Rosa's eyes narrowed as she approached. Miguel raised his hands. Hey man, I just got here, he said loudly enough for Rosa to hear. She ignored him and came right up to me. What do you think you're staring at, you pervert? Rosa demanded. I was about to apologize when a giggling woman in a toy bridal veil fell into the table, dragged by her maid of honor. The maid of honor, with a pink sash, grabbed my arm. She needs to dance with 5 more guys. The maid of honor insisted. I was pulled to my feet and gestured helplessly to Rosa. I'll be back. The bride, less drunk than her bridesmaid, seemed uncomfortable with the game. I tried to be a gentleman. I didn't make it back to the table for 3 more dances, intercepted by another bride, another maid of honor, and a very pretty trans woman who saved me from the cougar. At least dancing with her wasn't like dancing with an aroused octopus. I was heading back to the table when a hand grabbed mine, pulling me back onto the dance floor. Were you ever coming back to your table? Rosa glared at me as we started to dance. She seemed less angry than before. I tried. I had a cold beer back there, but it's probably warm by now, I said. No, I drank it. I was waiting for you to come back and apologize, Rosa responded. Any inclination to apologize vanished. Nonsense. If you didn't want people staring at your bum, you wouldn't paint those jeans on and bend over like that. Rosa's lips tightened, eyes narrowing. That wasn't for your benefit, pervert. I shrugged. I didn't see a reserve sign on it, and I looked pretty close. I expected her to explode, but she chuckled and shook her head. Miguel says you're not as much of in a hole as I thought. He said it was his fault. They didn't tie me down and force me to drink. I said, trying to remember. At least I don't think they did. But he could have not painted me and dropped me off unclothed. She smiled. I didn't expect you to actually come back and clean up the vomit. I wish you'd told me that. Dragging those buckets around with a hangover was awful. The dance with Rosa was pleasant, and I felt we had a truce, at least for now. I watched her walk back to her table, enjoying the view. She glanced back, smiled and mouthed pervert at me. I winked, and she rolled her eyes before sitting down. Miguel looked me over for injuries. Looks like you got away alive. She's your cousin, I said. Yeah, second cousin, Miguel replied. Thanks for putting in a good word, I said. Kinda owed you that, Miguel admitted. Man, you did. A hole, I said. I managed a week without any mayhem, which was a record. 1 call to my PO, 6 days of work, and no hangover for 2 Sundays in a row. Life was good, so of course it couldn't last. We finished a field early and were heading back before sunset. Hey, Chose, isn't that your parole officer with the blonde woman in that restaurant? Miguel asked. Yeah, I froze. What? Miguel pulled away from the stoplight. That's my ex-wife, I said, noticing Beth's blouse was unbuttoned an awful lot for a friendly lunch. What's she doing with that a hole? Miguel glanced at me, then focused on the road. Hold on. He stopped the bus, yelled in Spanish to the back, and a bearded guy moved to the front. Miguel opened the door as I started to get up. No, you stay here, Miguel instructed. I need to know what's going on, I protested. Exactly, but you're still pronouncing it wrong. This is Jesus and he knows your parole officer. We have a cousin who works there. Maybe we'll get lucky and find out, Miguel said. I wanted to say it was a coincidence, but what were the odds of my ex-wife accidentally meeting my low-life parole officer? I sighed, thinking maybe she was checking up on me. Miguel raised an eyebrow at me. Maybe, but it feels messed up. We rolled out and Miguel glanced at me in the mirror. I'll come by tonight and let you know what Jesus finds out. I nodded, feeling sick. Jesus didn't find out much, but what he did learn was unsettling. One of the waitresses, a cousin, had noticed Beth all over Fish, who seemed very nervous. She was trying to get him to do something using seduction. Jesus said if her blouse unbuttoned anymore, she'd need to start on her skirt. Maybe she wants him to go easy on me. I said, though it sounded hollow, you can't be that stupid, Jose. Going easy on you wouldn't make him uncomfortable. He's cool with child aggressors and eliminators. He's got a good reputation, Miguel countered. How do you know? I asked. There aren't many POs around here. I got a cousin who... Miguel started. I waved him off. I have a bad feeling about this. Miguel stared at my peeling linoleum tabletop. You gonna look into it? Yeah, I'll just pull a few grand out of my account for a private eye. I shook my head. I can't afford that. Do private eyes even exist anymore? Miguel grinned. You don't need to. I got a cousin who works in housekeeping at her condo. Jesus, Miguel, how many cousins do you have? I asked. As many as we need. We're everywhere and invisible, he replied. You don't need to do this, I said. He laughed. This is cool. Play detective. Besides, it's what friends do. We went to his cousin Isabel's house. She thought it sounded exciting and fun at first. But when she asked for a picture of Beth, she looked at it, then suddenly forgot English and started speaking rapid-fire Spanish to Miguel. Miguel, what's going on? I asked, sensing something was wrong. He looked pained. Ooh, Jose. Even I know what paella means, Miguel, I said, irritated. Isabel squared up. She's got a couple of guys who visit all the time. We're divorced. I may not like it, but it happens, I said, lying. I hated it. Isabel looked at me stonily. You've been divorced for 4 years? My mouth went dry. What do you mean I've worked there for 4 years? And she's had one guy coming over the whole time, Isabel revealed. I felt oddly relieved. I can't be her. I was home every night. They come over at lunchtime. I'm sure it's her. Skinny bum witch, Isabel said. Another guy started showing up 2 years ago. Miguel pulled out his phone and showed a picture of Fish. This guy, Miguel asked. She shook her head. No, the new guy is a big blonde, maybe a weightlifter. The long-term guy is thin, dark-haired, jittery. You got to be kidding me, I said, trying to sit but ending up on the floor. That sounds like Alan Voorhees from accounting. Crap. Isabel looked at me sadly. You didn't suspect? How could I? Her office is 5 minutes away. Mine was 40 minutes in good traffic, I explained. Miguel grabbed my shoulder. You're not going to do something crazy, right? You'll break your parole. I shook my head. Go after them? My martial arts training is walking into spider webs and going full kung fu theater. I can't afford a pie, and screwing around isn't illegal. There's nothing I can do, Miguel shrugged. Knowing I was right, I expected Fish to show up with more demands, but he didn't. 2 weeks later, just as we were near the city limits, Miguel got a call. He cut across 3 lanes of traffic and sped back to the trailer park. He stopped directly in front of my trailer. Rosa, in her skimpy pink robe, stood cross-armed, glaring at Fish. Leonard and Maisie watched, fascinated. I barely stepped off the bus before Rosa shifted her attention to me. Did you give this idiot permission to go into your trailer? He came in right after the bus left, Rosa demanded. It's a condition of parole, Fish said, glaring. You have no expectation of privacy. Yeah, but you need reasonable suspicion. Otherwise, it's maltreatment. I read the terms. I can ask for another officer to be present, I countered. His lip twitched. That's for female parolees who want a female officer. It doesn't say that. It just says I can have one. I decided to drop my bomb. What did Beth want? His face paled. I don't need this. He turned and walked to his car. I followed. What's going on, Fish? I asked. He opened the door and looked at me, visibly aged. How would I know? He slammed the door, started the car, then rolled down the window. I'm transferring you to Anderson. I don't want any part of this. Part of what, damn it? I shouted. He flicked something out the window and stared at me. Your ex-wife wants you back in prison. Watch your back. She'll do anything. He drove off. Leonard picked up a package from the dirt. Oxy in 4 bags, probably 20 tabs. That'd be intent to distribute, Leonard said. Miguel shook his head silently. I closed my eyes. Rosa moved closer, her scent calming me. She watched Fisher's car disappear. He was going to plant that in your trailer? Rosa asked. I nodded, barely able to speak. You'd have gone back to prison, she continued. I nodded again. It would be to a real prison this time, with real gangs. I shivered, and Rosa grabbed my arm. Are you okay? She asked softly. Not really, I admitted. Why does your ex want you in prison? You're not stalking her, right? Rosa asked, concerned. I don't even have a car. Miguel drives me everywhere. How could I stalk her? I replied, trying to focus. Somehow, Rosa holding my arm helped me focus. Something's going on, but I don't know what. We're divorced. She got everything, and I haven't been near her. I took a deep breath and told Rosa how I ended up divorced and on parole. She looked puzzled. She tried to screw that guy into putting you in prison. Rosa asked incredulously. Seems like it, I confirmed. She must really hate you, Rosa said, shaking her head. I didn't do anything. She was the one cheating, and I didn't even know it. I said, feeling the weight of it all. Rosa's lips twisted attractively. You didn't have to do anything. She might blame you for her actions. Women, you know. Her big brown eyes locked on mine. He's right. You need to watch your back. She hates you that much and isn't stopping now. I felt exhausted. The idea that Beth hated me was sickening. I looked at Miguel. Do you have any cousins in Bergman Towers? That's where Beth works, I asked. He grinned. What can I say, man? We're everywhere. I'll also tell Isabel to get pictures of any visitors she gets at home. Miguel said. Maisie, wearing Leonard's overalls, peered at Fisher's disappearing car. Leonard and I will keep an eye on your trailer, but you should install a latch with a padlock, she suggested. I felt Rosa let go and turn to her. You called Miguel? I asked. She nodded. You saved me, I said gratefully. She looked uncertain for a second, then smirked. You spend all your time watching my bum. I figured I could watch yours for a change, she teased. Miguel rolled his eyes. Yours is a lot more interesting than his, he quipped. Rosa looked up. God, I hope so. If it isn't, I spend too much time at the gym. She winked and slapped her bum. I blinked and dragged my eyes back to hers. Where do you work anyway? I asked. Crestridge Medical Center. I'm an LPN. Pay isn't great, but the insurance is good, Rosa replied. I pretended to study her bum. And it obviously has a great gym, I commented. She smiled smugly and wiggled a little. Damn right, she said. Miguel looked at the bus. We got a field of tomatoes waiting, Jose. He reminded me. I nodded. Yeah, thanks again, Rosa. You saved me, I said. I'm glad I could help. Let me know what's going on, okay, she said. She walked away toward her trailer, letting the wind play with her robe. Wow, Maisie muttered, scratching herself through the overalls. Sop that up with a biscuit. Leonard rolled his eyes. For God's sake, she's half your age, Maisie grinned. Yeah, she is. Pervert, Leonard muttered. Yep, Maisie replied with a satisfied nod. It took Isabel 6 days to get pictures of both of Beth's regular visitors. We gathered in her living room as she showed them to us. One was Voorhees, whom I barely noticed at Beth's office. I never imagined him sneaking over and sleeping with her while I was at work. The other guy was a mystery. Big, blonde, with a crew cut, wearing a decent suit and carrying a briefcase. I didn't recognize him at all. Miguel looked at me. I shook my head. Nothing. Maybe he works for your old company, Isabel suggested, clearly enjoying her spy role. No, I've never seen him, I replied. What about at your wife's office? Isabel asked, eager to continue the investigation. I visited there a few times. I recognized Voorhees, didn't I? The brokers were in my building, but the support staff was in the headquarters, I said. Miguel looked disappointed. I have a cousin who does security there. Really? Really? I was starting to think Miguel's family tree was enormous. He nodded, frowned, and pulled out his phone. Let me text him, he said. Seconds later, he had a response. We can drop by and he'll take a look. As we headed out, Isabel's husband spoke quietly to Miguel, who chuckled softly. Isabel's husband wants us to keep investigating, Miguel said. Why? He hasn't even been involved, I asked, puzzled. Isabel enjoys it. She's more energized when she gets home from work now, Miguel explained. Wait, so I began. Yeah, she's had a fantasy about being a detective. She even bought handcuffs and a fingerprint kit, Miguel said, grinning. Stop. I don't want to know, I interrupted. Miguel laughed, but it's really. Dear God, Miguel. Just stop, or I'll tell you about Leonard and Maisie and the spatula, I warned. That's nasty. You win, Miguel conceded. We arrived at a small apartment building. Miguel led me to the 3rd floor and knocked on a green door. A powerful red-haired giant opened it. Miguel introduced us. Jose, this is my cousin Bjorn. He manages the security team at your ex-wife's building. They hired him from the NYPD. Miguel introduced. Miguel, he doesn't look very Mexican. I said, puzzled. Yeah, well, he's Norwegian, Miguel explained. Bjorn sighed. Swedish, Miguel. Yeah, Bork, Swedish, Norwegian, Finnish, whatever. Miguel shrugged. Bjorn waved us in with a smile. Miguel still mad about that FIFA match last year? Oh, not that again. You got lucky once, Miguel retorted. Bjorn looked thoughtful. Got lucky on a $100 bet? Get lucky with your sister, man, Miguel shot back. She's taller than me. She'd have to hold you by the feet and use you like a toy. How long can you hold your breath? Maybe I'll give her a call? Bjorn said, grinning. Miguel winced comically. Moron. So where's Kelsey? She's the highlight of visiting you. Bjorn handed us beers. She's stuck in traffic. Had a gig on the east side. Miguel pointed to a picture of Bjorn with a cheerful pale woman. Kelsey's a clown, like a real one. Went to clown school and everything. Academy? It's Clown Academy, Bjorn corrected. She's a medical clown now, working in children's wards at hospitals. I met her in New York when she was a busker doing street magic. She got stuck there when her circus shut down. I arrested her. Seriously. I sipped my beer, intrigued. Yeah, she fought with a mime and I had to arrest them both. Bjorn said. Miguel snickered. Did you keep a straight face when you told the mime he had the right to remain silent? It took 3 tries. Then I searched Kelsey. Found a dozen balloon animals, rubber chickens, a joy buzzer, 6 giant lollipops, 2 bob horns, and about 50 yards of handkerchiefs tied together. The last one had a red lace strip tied to it. It took 15 minutes and drew a huge crowd. She made nearly 600 in tips. Hell of a way to meet. I savored another sip. Yeah, she found me on duty a few days later, gave me her number, and demanded a date. The door opened and a cheerful clown walked in, not creepy, but bouncy and cute. Hey, Miguel, nacho cheese Doritos, she grinned at me. It's the only Spanish I know. Her silliness was infectious and I laughed. She leaned over and studied me intently. Bjorn giving you some line of nonsense about me? She asked, raising her hands. He tells everyone I'm a clown. You are in clown makeup and carrying a rubber chicken, I pointed out. She held up the chicken. Dinner. And maybe I overdid the eyeshadow this morning. She deadpanned, then grinned. Anyway, it was only 43 handkerchiefs, not 50, and he loves the clown thing. She spun into a pirouette and slid into Bjorn's lap. Don't you, babe? He kissed her, and she spun out of his lap. Be right back. Got to get the makeup off. Bjorn watched her leave, then turned serious. The text sounded urgent. What's up? Jose's a problem. Someone is trying to set him up and he doesn't know why, Miguel explained. Bjorn eyed me. He looks more like a Joseph than a Jose to me. Miguel, I corrected. He tipped his bottle toward me. I have strict instructions to keep you out of the complex. So I hope that's not the help you're looking for. What's the problem? It took about 15 minutes to explain and Kelsey joined us with a beer. Sounds like a mess. Does your ex hate you that much? She asked. I shrugged. No reason for it, as far as I know. What are you trying to do now? Bjorn inquired. We're trying to figure out who this is. Miguel showed Bjorn a picture of the blonde guy with Beth. Seen this guy? Bjorn nodded. Yeah, he's been around, not as much lately. Didn't know he knew Beth. Never saw him with Voorhees either. So who is he? I asked. Evan Batchelder. He tried to intimidate me when he first showed up. He's an SAE investigator, Bjorn revealed. Miguel and I were quiet on the way back to the trailer park. He stopped at the gate. So, not all your cousins are really cousins, I remarked. He shrugged. You have the family you're born with, and the family you choose. And Rosa? I asked. She's really my second cousin. Likes you, Miguel said. Weren't you the one who said she might eliminate me? I reminded him. Miguel grinned. She might, doesn't mean she doesn't like you. His grin faded. What are you going to do? I don't know. Beth seeing the CC guy is an ethics violation. I'd rather leave it alone, I said. But she won't leave you alone. Don't do anything stupid. You need help, I'll help. Okay? Miguel offered. I nodded, unsure. He drove off and I walked through the dim trailer park. Hey, pervert, Rosa called out. I looked over at Rosa's trailer. She was sitting outside. Hey, Rosa, I greeted her. Bad day? She asked. Yeah, everything I thought I knew about my wife is nonsense, I replied. She held up a bottle. Need a drink? Tapasha from Jalisco? I approached. That's the good stuff. Don't waste it on me. Rosa smiled. I've been there with my ex. I can spare some. She patted the chair next to hers. You promised to let me know what's going on. I slumped into the chair and took the bottle. I don't have a cup. Tequila eliminates germs. You won't catch my cuties, she said. I took a sip. More worried about you catching my bad luck. So what happened? She leaned forward. I told her the whole story. What does that mean? She asked. It looks like Beth has been setting me up for years. She was with the SEC guy over a year before the investigation, and Voorhees 2 years before that. She tried to get Fish to put me back in prison, I explained. Rosa pulled her feet up into her chair. How long were you married? Just over 4 years, I replied. So she was with Voorhees practically from the beginning, Rosa noted. We sat quietly for a bit. Think she married you to set you up, she asked. That thought makes me feel even worse, I admitted. She took the bottle, sipped, and handed it back. Manipulating men is what some women do best, she looked at me. What are you going to do? Get revenge? I shook my head. I just want out of this. But that won't work. Rosa held up the empty bottle, then stood up. Maybe another bottle would help. Think it through. I think I have one inside. She walked to her door, and when she opened it, the light seemed to dissolve her robe as she looked back at me. You coming? She asked. I followed, entranced by the sway of her hips. She paused, and the chihuahua darted under a chair. The bottle's in my bedroom, she said, pointing to an open door. As I stepped closer, she turned and smiled wickedly, her robe open. I pulled her against me, and she grinned wider. I warned you. Manipulating men is what some women do best, Rosa said. Hooking a leg around me, she started to speak, but I kissed her. She shrugged off her robe, and I carried her to the bedroom, the chihuahua howling from under the chair. Later, Rosa lay half across me, waking up. She smiled. Wow, you must have been saving that up. I'm a little tender. She glanced at the floor. I'm throwing that pillow away. Yeah, washing won't help, I agreed. She laughed. I'll just buy a new one. I ran my fingers through her hair. I haven't had an active social life. You didn't hook up with that old lady at the club, she said. No, I replied. She laughed. I know you didn't. I was keeping an eye on you, I said. Fair. I had an eye on you too, she teased. And I lied. That stuff at the club was for your benefit. Rosa grew serious. I need to tell you the truth. I knew you'd be at the club. That's why I went. I'm going to eliminate Miguel, I muttered. He didn't know. He asked for a good play, so I decided to show up, Rosa explained. Why? I asked. Because I needed to stop being a witch. I've been angry since my ex-husband. I thought you might understand. Besides, I got a good look at you before you picked up that sombrero. Pervert, she said. She giggled. So you wiggled your bum at me. It worked, didn't it? You drooled over me every time I went outside. Is that why you wear that robe? I asked. Sometimes I'm an exhibitionist. You found my weakness, she admitted, and I squeezed her bum. A knock interrupted. Rosa put on her robe and answered the door while I got dressed. Rosa looked at me puzzled. This girl needs to talk to you. Kelsey stepped in. Hey, Jose, got a minute? Rosa gets to hear it, I said. Okay, Kelsey sighed. But this doesn't go to Bjorn. Okay, I nodded. When the circus went bankrupt, I was screwed. I started street performing in small cons like 3-Card Monte, Kelsey began. Bjorn said you did street magic, I noted. Tough as kind, just you and the marks. No stage sets, no assistants, she grinned. I was good at it. Rosa asked, what does that have to do with everything here? Kelsey blew out a breath. I heard stuff about big cons and helped on a couple. Bjorn thinks he rescued me before I got in too deep, and he mostly did. I didn't do anything really bad, but being broke in the city sucks. I don't want to tarnish what he did. He doesn't deserve that. I looked at Rosa, who smiled gently and laughed softly. I understand. Kelsey grinned at Rosa and gave an exaggerated wink before looking at me. I think you're looking at this the wrong way. Why? I asked. Because you're wondering why they're targeting you. This is just another big con and you're not the mark. She paused. No offense, Joseph, but you can't be the mark. You don't have anything worth taking? She glanced at Rosa. No money or valuable stuff. I know, I grimaced. Then why set me up? Why try to put me back in prison? You're not the mark. You're part of the con. You're the distraction. Kelsey explained. I stared at her. I don't know what that means, but it doesn't sound good. It means you're the diversion. They want everyone looking at you, not them, she clarified. Rosa asked. How do we stop it? Kelsey grinned. Just convince the mark they're being conned. I had a sudden realization. Damn it, I'm an idiot. Why? Rosa asked, puzzled. The Seychelles. We were going to Fiji for our honeymoon, but Beth suddenly changed it to the Seychelles. Why does that matter? Rosa questioned. Banking laws. She sent me deep sea fishing one day while she stayed at the spa. I bet she set up an account in person so there'd be no trail to her, I explained. Isn't there anyone you can call? Rosa asked. The CC has a reporting mechanism, but that probably just tipped them off, I said. I almost choked on the tequila. Who watches the Watchmen? Rosa smiled. Why not both the DOJ and the FBI? The FBI and IRS have websites for reporting fraud. So I used the library computer to report it, hoping it would cause enough trouble for Beth and her cohorts to leave me alone. I reported to PO. Anderson and worked with Miguel and the crew until the end of the harvest. Then I found a job making donuts, which was easier, but I missed the old crew. The hours matched Rose's, and we were pretty much living together, so life was good. But it couldn't stay that easy. As I was nuzzling Rose's neck and grabbing her bum while she set the table, a harsh knock sounded. Rosa glared at the door, trying to calm her breathing. Damn it, if Leonard's here to borrow my robe again. The answer is no, it wasn't Leonard. It was two deputies and a couple of guys in suits. I recognized the deputies. The older plainclothes man held up his credentials. Joseph Bateman. I nodded, seeing Leonard and Maisie peering out from Leonard's trailer. I'm Special Agent Tanner with the FBI. We need you to come to the field office to answer a few questions. Rosa clamped onto my arm. Are you arresting him? No, we just have a few questions. I looked at Rosa. I probably need to do this. She reluctantly let me go, but not before taking cell phone pictures of the agents and whispering something in Spanish to one of the deputies. He paled, likely from a pass-away threat. As we drove away, I saw Leonard and Maisie heading to Rosa's trailer. At the FBI field office, I was put in an interview room with nauseatingly white walls, grey carpet, and a dull grey table, and told to wait. After 20 minutes, a clean-cut guy in a black suit entered, placed his credentials on the table, opened a folder, and introduced himself. Mr. Bateman, I'm Senior Special Agent Michael Rivera from the Criminal Cyber Response and Services Branch in D.C. We received your tip and need clarification for an ongoing FBI-IRS investigation. We appreciate your assistance. I stared in surreal horror. Miguel. Ignoring my whisper, he pointed to a line item on the list. You mentioned the money may have been moved to an account in the Seychelles. We need to narrow down which institution your ex-wife may have used for the next 2 hours. SSA Rivera went over every detail of the suspected plot. I had to handwrite and sign statements, review maps and honeymoon itineraries, all while Rivera acted like we'd never met, thankfully. There were no references to Isabel, Bjorn, or Kelsey. They were supposed to be family. After we finished, he gave me a perfect government official handshake and thanked me for assisting in the investigation. I walked into Rosa's trailer with silence roaring in my ears. She was waiting for me. Are you okay? She asked, concerned. Did you know about Michael? I asked. Michael who? She recoiled. Miguel. What about Miguel? Is he okay? She asked, worried. He's an FBI agent, I revealed. The shock and disbelief on Rosa's face was the most comforting thing I could have seen. Miguel, are you serious? He told me he came out here because he had trouble in New York. Her voice trailed off and she stood silent for a moment before launching into rapid Spanish. I was probably lucky I didn't understand. After a few minutes, I wondered if Liam would let me hide under the chair with him. Rosa, I am so sorry, I apologized. She stopped and blinked. For what? For even thinking you could have. I trailed off. She shook her head. You asked. You didn't accuse me of anything. That Hydro de Puta lied to us. His family. We saw the arrests and trial on TV. The FBI and IRS investigation into CC corruption was in the news for a year. Beth took a plea deal, but still got 15 years after turning over the money she'd stashed overseas. The CC investigator got 20 years with no plea deal. More people were involved than I thought, which made me uneasy considering Beth had drawn most of them into her plan. I was lucky I wasn't a CDC case study. Most got 5 years though, one guy only got 18 months. Rose's only comment on Beth was, you were married to that skinny witch. I thought you liked women with real bums. What can I say? I was deprived for 4 years. I'm making up for it now. She shot me a fake scowl, but the corner of her mouth twisted into a smile. I know, I can't even wear shorts. You keep leaving tooth marks all over me. She still spent most of her time off wearing just her skimpy robe. If anything, her exhibitionist streak had gotten worse. I didn't argue, though she did occasionally have a tooth mark or two. The court was looking at vacating my conviction. During the investigation, someone admitted that Voorhees had planted the pills in my car. Beth had orchestrated it. I wasn't holding my breath, though. At the speed the courts moved, I'd be done with parole before they got to it. P.O. Anderson had gone hands-off and even told me about the move to vacate. Fish retired quietly without charges, and I wasn't sure how I felt about that, but Rosa said she suspected he wouldn't have gone through with it. That was good enough for me. For months after Beth's sentencing, Rosa and I met Bjorn and Kelsey at the Salsa Club. We also ran into them at street festivals and sometimes met at the club for dinner and drinks. Dancing with a double-jointed clown was a trip, and watching Kelsey perform street magic tricks on patrons never got old. One evening we arrived early. I grabbed a table while Rosa freshened up. I had just waved a waitress over when Miguel pulled out a chair. I'll get this round, man. I owe you one. Miguel spoke to the waitress briefly and then sat down. Miguel? Or is it Michael? I asked. He sighed. Miguel, you might want to keep a clear path to the door. Rosa's pissed at you. Yeah, I figured. You earned that doing your job. I bought it. I thought you were my friend. You're good. Lots of training. Bjorn told me he suspected something. He just didn't think FBI. He thought maybe State Narcotics Task Force. I said, I wasn't even there for you, you know. We had an op running but came up empty. I was already in place when the employment agency dropped you there. Blind luck, Miguel explained. The FBI stalks, low-level pill parolees. Really? What kind of crap is that? I asked, incredulous. Everyone was convinced you had the money hidden. Probably 6 agencies watching, waiting for you to run. Took me a while to suspect you weren't in on it, Miguel admitted. Why didn't you say something? I demanded. I couldn't be sure for a while. Once we learned an SEC investigator was involved, I was stuck. The rules are simple. The FBI should have investigated, but none of our evidence was legal, and the politics were complicated. We couldn't legally initiate an investigation with what we had, he said. But if somebody lodged a whistleblower complaint, you'd have probable cause. I suggested. He nodded. It worked, didn't it? We figured out why she kept targeting you after you were out. You were supposed to be the fall guy, but they didn't realize that. There wasn't enough evidence to really railroad you. So when you got out after a few months, the SEC and IRS were on high alert. Beth couldn't touch the money without drawing attention. If I went back to prison for a long time, the pressure would be off and she'd be free and clear, I concluded. That's too cold, Miguel said, shaking his head. Yeah, I interviewed her. She's probably a full-blown sociopath. They're drawn to money and power and end up in politics, law, and finance. Cold as ice and damn good liars. Convincing as hell, I said. Kind of the pot calling the kettle black there, Miguel, I noted. He shrugged. Fair, still, you're lucky you're alive. She probably figured liquidating you would draw too much attention. She did ask about you, though, wondering why you hadn't tried to see her and talk. What the hell is there to talk about? She was never who I thought she was, I said bitterly. Miguel put his beer down. If she's like other sociopaths I've met, she wants to know she won in some way. See you break down or get upset. See your reaction when you realize you were played. He laughed. It really pissed her off when I told her you screwed up her plan, cost her all the money and put her in prison. Pretty one-sided win there. I was just trying to stop everything. I said, I know, but it worked for me. Sociopaths are usually narcissists. She tried to show how she won by explaining stuff we didn't know, put 2 more holes behind bars and recovered a bit more money, Miguel concluded. Rosa suddenly appeared by the table, glaring at Miguel. She hissed something and he raised his hands in surrender. I know, my mum relayed your, opinion to me. I'll never hear the end of it, so thanks, Miguel said. Rosa glanced between us. I shrugged. He's explaining what happened. She pulled a chair next to mine, gripping my arm possessively and still glaring at Miguel. He took a sip of his beer. What else do you want to know? I asked. How many people were involved? Are you sure you want to know? Miguel asked, frowning. 10, but 2 were women. 11 if you count the eat geek who botched the frame job on you. He only got a few blowjobs in the server room. He rolled on everyone as soon as we pressured him. He got 18 months, Miguel explained. 18 months in prison for a few blowjobs. Damn, I shook my head. Rosa elbowed me with a grin. Mine aren't worth that. Of course they are, I replied. Oh God, too much information. Miguel held his hands up as Rosa laughed wickedly. Things got quiet, the joking reminding us of how close we'd been. I turned my beer bottle a few times. What do you want, Miguel? I asked. I wanted to set things right. Family, you know, he said. I had bitter replies in my head, but let them go. Are we Jose and Miguel? Yeah, cousins. Michael and Joseph? Not so much, Miguel replied. I looked at Rosa. I think I can live with that. She studied him. You ever do that again, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Her tone was certain, not venomous. He nodded. I know. And I deserve it. Thanks for giving me a chance to make things right. Rosa nodded, mollified by his apology. He finished his beer. I need to apologize to Isabel. I talked to Bjorn and Kelsey. That's how I knew you'd be here. Bjorn understands, but Kelsey will take a while. She doesn't trust easily, but when she does, it's wholehearted. I messed that up. I nodded. Despite Kelsey's street smarts, she had a precious naivete that Rosa loved. He stood up, pulled an envelope from his back pocket, and smiled. With a bit of irony, I asked if I could deliver this personally. What is it? I asked wary. The adjudication on the IRS reward money for reporting tax evasion. It's not a fortune, but it should help. It's a percentage of the taxes owed on underreported income minus taxes and other deductions, but it'll help you get back on your feet, he said. He paused. If they vacate your conviction, will you go back to your job? I shook my head. No, there will always be suspicion. No one would sponsor me for a Series 7 again. The donut shop owner is thinking about selling. I'm managing it now and looking into bank loans. It's affordable and the profits are good. Miguel snickered. A big shot donut shop owner. Jesus, you're saying it wrong. He works at the shop. I hired him and Alejandro. I corrected. Still hard to picture. Miguel said. Money is just money, Miguel. I have family now, I said. I saw a flash of pain before he walked away. I opened the envelope and sorted the papers. The total was over $500,000. I showed it to Rosa. She smiled. No problem buying the donut shop now, and we can get you a nicer engagement ring. She studied her quarter-carat ring. No, I'm keeping this one. You worked hard to save up for it. That means a lot more. I squeezed her thigh. What are we going to do with the money left over after buying the shop? She looked up. There are a lot of empty lots in the trailer park. Maybe we could get a double-wide trailer with a big deck to have everyone over. Like Leonard and Maisie? Maybe even Miguel in a month or two? She looked at the door. I nodded. With a barbecue grill, patio furniture, and a good stereo system, that sounds about right. Rosa leaned against me. Maybe we could make one of the bedrooms a nursery, in the future. Her voice was measured, but I heard her uncertainty. Maybe not too far in the future, okay? Maybe get a 4-bedroom one. You never know, I said, trying to reassure her. Rosa sighed. Maybe I'll be the one leaving tooth marks on your bum tonight, she teased. Pervert, I said, and she giggled. You better believe it, Rosa replied.